Standing in my parents' driveway, I watched the silver Bentley Continental gleam under the afternoon sun. My sister Melody twirled the keys while Mom beamed beside her. "She needs this car for her real estate business," Mom declared, "and you earn your own money, Berenice." 3 months later, that same Bentley would be wrapped around a telephone pole, Melody would be in handcuffs, and my parents would be begging me for help. But that day, all I felt was the familiar sting of being invisible. The April sunshine couldn't warm the cold feeling spreading through my chest as I stood there watching my 25-year-old sister run her manicured fingers along the Bentley's pristine hood. At 28, I'd accomplished everything my parents had said they wanted for their daughters. A college degree earned through countless late nights and 3 simultaneous jobs. A position as marketing director at one of Seattle's fastest-growing tech startups. A downtown apartment I'd purchased entirely on my own. Yet here I stood watching them gift Melody a car worth more than most people's houses. "Berenice, don't make that face," my mother said, finally acknowledging my presence. Her carefully styled blonde hair caught the light as she turned toward me. "You know how hard Melody's been working to establish herself." I bit back the response burning on my tongue. Hard work. Melody had dropped out of college twice, first from the University of Washington after 1 semester, then from a community college after 3 weeks. Both times our parents had absorbed the financial loss without question. She'd cycled through a dozen career attempts in 5 years, from fashion blogger to yoga instructor to her current incarnation as a real estate agent. "Mom, that car costs over $200,000, I said, keeping my voice measured despite the hurt churning inside me. "It's an investment in her future," my father chimed in, emerging from the garage. Richard Caldwell had built his construction supply company from nothing, or so he loved to remind us. His gray hair was thinning now, but his voice still carried the authority of a man used to being obeyed. Image matters in real estate. Clients need to see success. Success. I thought about my reliable Honda Civic parked on the street, the one I'd researched extensively before purchasing, comparing fuel efficiency and safety ratings. It had taken me everywhere I needed to go for the past 5 years without complaint. But apparently, actual success didn't matter as much as the appearance of it. "Besides," Melody added, flashing me the smile that had gotten her out of trouble since childhood, "some of us need a little help getting started. Not everyone can be perfect like you, Berenice." The words stung more than they should have. Perfect. That's what they called me when they wanted to dismiss my achievements. Perfect Berenice who never needed help. Perfect Berenice who figured everything out on her own, as if my independence was a character flaw rather than a necessity born from years of being overlooked. I remembered my college graduation day vividly. I'd walked across that stage knowing my parents were somewhere in the audience, but I couldn't spot them in the crowd. Later, I found out they'd left early because Melody had called crying about a bad breakup. They'd rushed to comfort her missing the moment I'd worked 4 years to achieve. When I'd confronted them about it, Mom had said, "But you did so well. We knew you'd be fine. Melody needed us more." That became the pattern of our family. Melody needed. Berenice managed. Melody struggled. Berenice succeeded. And somehow, my success became the reason I deserved less attention, less support, less celebration. "I should get going," I said, glancing at my phone. "I have a presentation tomorrow." "Always working," Dad said, but it wasn't pride in his voice. It sounded more like an accusation. "You should learn to enjoy life like your sister does." Enjoy life? I thought about the student loans I'd finally paid off last year, the 70-hour weeks I'd worked to earn my promotions, the conferences I'd attended on weekends to build my network. Meanwhile, Melody's version of enjoying life had been funded entirely by our parents' credit cards. As I walked toward my car, Melody called out, "Hey, Berenice, wanna go for a ride? This baby purrs like you wouldn't believe." I turned back, forced to smile. "Another time. Congratulations on the car, Mel." Thanks, sis. I promise I'll take you somewhere nice when you need a break from all that boring work stuff. I sat in my Honda for a moment before starting the engine, watching through the windshield as my parents fawned over Melody and her new toy. Dad was explaining something about the engine specifications, while Mom took photos with her phone, probably to post on social media later. Look at our successful daughter, the posts would suggest. See how well she's doing. The drive back to my apartment gave me time to process the familiar emotions. It wasn't really about the car, I told myself. I didn't need a Bentley. I was proud of earning everything I had through my own efforts. But it would have been nice just once to have my parents see me as worthy of that kind of gesture, to be the daughter they bragged about, the one they invested in, the one they believed in enough to take risks for. My phone buzzed at a red light. A text from my grandmother, Dad's mother. "Berenice, dear, could you stop by tomorrow? I have some papers I don't understand. You're so good with these things." At least someone in the family recognized my abilities as an asset, rather than an excuse to ignore me. I texted back that I'd come by after work, then continued home unaware that Grandma Ruth's confusion about those papers would be the first thread in unraveling the elaborate deception my family had built. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day's events. In 3 months, everything would be different. The Bentley would be destroyed. Melody would be in police custody, and my parents would finally understand the cost of their favoritism. But that night, all I knew was the familiar ache of being the daughter who was expected to succeed without support, while my sister was supported despite her failures. What I didn't know was that the Bentley wasn't just a gift. It was a symptom of something much darker, a desperate attempt to maintain an illusion that was already beginning to crack. And when it finally shattered, it would be perfect, responsible Berenice who would have to pick up the pieces. 2 weeks after the Bentley appeared in my parents' driveway, our family gathered for our monthly Sunday dinner. These gatherings had become increasingly uncomfortable for me over the years, but I maintained the tradition out of a sense of duty and the slim hope that one day things might be different. I arrived to find Melody's Bentley parked diagonally across the driveway, taking up enough space for 3 cars. Inside, the house buzzed with the usual pre-dinner energy. Mom fussed over her signature pot roast while Dad mixed cocktails in the living room, and Melody held court on the white leather sofa, her laptop open on the coffee table. "Berenice," Melody called out, not looking up from her screen. "Perfect timing. I was just showing Dad my latest listings. Business is absolutely exploding." I set down the wine I'd brought and moved closer, genuinely curious. If Melody had truly found success in real estate, I'd be the first to congratulate her. Despite our complicated relationship, I wanted my sister to thrive. 5 properties this month alone," she continued, tilting the screen toward Dad. "And look at these commission projections. By the end of the year, I'll be making more than—" She paused, glancing at me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Well, let's just say the Bentley will pay for itself." Something felt off about her enthusiasm. In my years in marketing, I'd learned to recognize when someone was overselling and Melody was laying it on thick. As she clicked through her presentation, I noticed inconsistencies. The property photos looked strangely generic, like stock images, rather than actual listings. "Melody, that's wonderful," Mom said, appearing from the kitchen with appetizers. "Richard, did you see our baby is going to be the top agent in Seattle?" While my parents cooed over Melody's success, I excused myself to use the bathroom. On my way back, I passed through Dad's study where Melody had left her laptop bag. A folder peeked out from the side pocket marked "Commission Statements" in Melody's handwriting. I hesitated. Snooping wasn't in my nature, but something compelled me to look. Maybe it was years of watching my parents throw money at Melody's problems without question. Maybe it was the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. Whatever the reason, I quickly pulled out the folder and opened it. What I found made my stomach drop. The commission statements were clumsy forgeries, obviously created in basic photo editing software. The letterhead was pixelated, the signatures clearly copied and pasted from somewhere else. But what shocked me most were the amounts. Melody was claiming commissions of $30,000 to $40,000 per month, astronomical figures for a new agent in any market. I heard footsteps in the hall and quickly replaced the folder, my mind racing. Why would Melody fake these documents? And more importantly, were my parents really falling for such obvious deceptions? During dinner, I watched my family with new eyes. Dad praised Melody's business acumen while Mom talked about planning a celebration for her first year in real estate. Neither seemed to question how someone who'd only gotten her license 18 months ago was suddenly out-earning established agents with decades of experience. So Melody, I said, carefully cutting into my pot roast, which brokerage are you with again? Cascade Elite Properties, she replied smoothly. Very exclusive. They only work with high net worth clients. I nodded, making a mental note to research them later. And your mentor there, what's their name? I'd love to connect with them about some marketing strategies for luxury real estate. For the first time that evening, Melody's confidence wavered. He's very private. Doesn't really do networking, you understand. I understood perfectly. There was no mentor. Probably no brokerage either. As Mom served dessert, Melody's phone rang repeatedly. She silenced it each time, but I noticed her growing agitation. Finally, she excused herself to take a call, leaving her laptop open on the dining table. Emergency showing, she said breathlessly when she returned. High-profile client wants to see a waterfront property right now. You know how it is in this business, always on call. She gathered her things, hastily kissing our parents goodbye. As she leaned over to close her laptop, I caught a glimpse of an open browser tab. The page title was partially visible, Short-Term Rental Management, Cash Only. After Melody left in a flourish of perfume and promises to close another big deal, I helped Mom clear the dishes. In the kitchen, away from Dad's ears, I tried a gentle approach. Mom, has Melody shown you any of her actual closed transactions? Property deeds, official documentation? Mom's hands stilled on the dish towel. Berenice, why must you always question your sister's success? Can't you just be happy for her? I am happy for her if it's real. But Mom, some of those commission numbers seem inflated for someone so new to the business. You don't know everything about real estate. Mom snapped, her voice sharp. Melody says the high-end market is different. Besides, your father and I have been helping her with expenses while she builds her client base. It's called investing in family. The admission hit me like cold water. How much have you been giving her? That's none of your business. We've never asked you for money, have we? No, they hadn't. They'd also never offered any, even when I was surviving on ramen noodles in college. But that wasn't the point anymore. Something dangerous was happening here, and my parents were too blinded by their desire to see Melody succeed to notice. That night, I went home and researched Cascade Elite Properties. The website existed, but was clearly a template with stock photos and generic text. The address listed led to a virtual office space that rented mailboxes by the month. No agent profiles, no sold listings, no real contact information beyond a form that probably went nowhere. More disturbing was what I found when I searched for recent real estate transactions in Melody's name. In 18 months, she'd closed exactly 2 sales, both small condos that would have netted modest commissions at best. Nowhere near the hundreds of thousands she was claiming to earn. But the real revelation came when I dug deeper into short-term rental regulations in Seattle. The city had strict rules about licensing and taxation. Operating illegal short-term rentals, especially in properties you didn't own, could result in serious fines and criminal charges. I thought about the glimpse I'd caught of Melody's screen, the cash-only notation. Was she using her real estate license to access vacant properties? and running illegal Airbnb operations. It would explain the Bentley, the sudden influx of supposed income, and her evasiveness about specifics. I spent the rest of the night agonizing over what to do. Confronting Melody directly would likely result in denial and family drama. Telling my parents would probably backfire with them accusing me of jealousy. But doing nothing felt irresponsible, especially if Melody was breaking laws that could destroy her future. As dawn broke over Seattle's skyline, I made my decision. I would gather more evidence before taking action. If Melody was truly in legal trouble, I needed proof that even my parents couldn't dismiss. What I didn't realize was that illegal short-term rentals were just the tip of the iceberg. Melody's deceptions ran deeper and darker than I could have imagined, and the Bentley wasn't a symbol of success, but a tool in a game that was about to turn deadly. The call from Grandma Ruth came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in the middle of a marketing presentation. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something about seeing her name on my phone during business hours felt urgent. I excused myself from the conference room and answered in the hallway. "Berenice, dear, I'm so sorry to bother you at work." Her voice trembled slightly, a vulnerability I wasn't used to hearing from my formidable grandmother. "But I've received some papers that don't make sense, and I'm frightened." My stomach tightened. Ruth Caldwell was 82 years old, sharp as a tack, and had managed her own finances since my grandfather passed 15 years ago. If something had her frightened, it was serious. "I'll be right there. Grandma," I said, already gathering my things from the conference room with an apologetic gesture to my team. "Don't worry about anything until I get there." The drive to Grandma Ruth's house in the Magnolia neighborhood took 30 minutes through Seattle traffic. She lived in the same craftsman home where my father had grown up, a beautiful property with views of Puget Sound that had quintupled in value over the decades. As I pulled into her driveway, I noticed her curtains twitch. She'd been watching for me. She opened the door before I could knock, dressed impeccably as always in a lavender cardigan and pressed slacks. But her usual composed demeanor was cracked with worry. "Thank you for coming, sweetheart," she said, ushering me inside. The house smelled of lemon polish and the ginger snap cookies she always kept in a jar on the counter. "I didn't know who else to call. Your father. Well, I didn't want to worry him if it's nothing." We settled in her living room, where she'd laid out several official-looking documents on the coffee table. My eyes immediately caught the letterhead of a mortgage company. "These came by certified mail yesterday," she explained, her manicured fingers trembling slightly as she pointed to the papers. "They're saying I've agreed to something called a second mortgage on this house. But Berenice, I've never spoken to these people. I haven't taken out any loans. The house has been paid off since '98. I picked up the documents, my marketing experience making me adept at parsing complex text quickly. What I read made my blood run cold. It was indeed a second mortgage for $300,000 against Grandma Ruth's house. The loan documents showed her signature alongside my father's as co-owners of the property. "Grandma," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice calm, "did you sign anything recently? Maybe Dad brought some papers by—" She shook her head firmly. "Nothing like this. Your father had me sign some insurance updates a few months ago, but he said it was just routine maintenance on my policies. I trust him, so I didn't read every page." Her voice trailed off as the implications hit her. I studied the signature on the mortgage documents. It looked like Grandma Ruth's handwriting, but something was off. The letters were too uniform, lacking the slight shake that had crept into her penmanship in recent years. "May I see the insurance papers Dad had you sign?" I asked gently. She disappeared into her study and returned with a folder. As I compared the signatures, my suspicions were confirmed. They were similar, but not identical. Someone had forged Grandma Ruth's signature on the mortgage documents. "There's something else," Grandma Ruth said, sinking into her favorite armchair. "I've been getting confused lately, forgetting appointments, losing track of conversations. The doctor says it's early-stage memory issues, nothing severe yet, but—" I've been scared to tell anyone. I didn't want to be a burden. My heart broke for her. Here was this proud, independent woman afraid of her own vulnerability. You could never be a burden, Grandma, but why didn't you tell Dad? A strange expression crossed her face. I was going to, but then he started asking odd questions about the house. Whether I'd ever considered moving to assisted living if managing the property was too much for me. It felt like he was pushing for something, so I kept quiet. The pieces were clicking into place with sickening clarity. Dad knew about Grandma's memory issues. Had he used that knowledge to forge her signature, believing she'd be too confused to notice or too embarrassed to challenge it? "Oh, Grandma, I need to ask you something important," I said, taking her hands in mine. "What are your plans for this house? Have you made any decisions about inheritance?" She smiled sadly. "I updated my will last year. The house is to be sold when I pass, with the proceeds split equally between you and Melody. I wanted you both to have something substantial, a real foundation for your futures. Your father was upset when I told him. He assumed he'd inherit everything as my only child." Now I understood. If Dad had power over the house through a second mortgage, he could potentially control what happened to it regardless of Grandma Ruth's wishes. The $300,000 probably went straight to funding Melody's lifestyle, including that ridiculous Bentley. "We need to contact a lawyer," I said firmly. "This is fraud, Grandma, and elder abuse." Her face paled. "But it's your father, my son. There must be an explanation." "Maybe there is," I conceded, though I doubted it. "But we need to protect you first. Will you trust me to handle this?" She squeezed my hands, tears forming in her sharp blue eyes. "You're the only one I trust right now, Berenice. I've watched how they treat you, always taking you for granted while spoiling Melody. I've wanted to say something for years, but it wasn't my place. Now I wonder if I should have spoken up sooner." We spent the next hour documenting everything. I photographed all the papers, recorded Grandma Ruth's statement on my phone, and helped her search for any other suspicious documents. We found 3 more instances of questionable signatures on financial forms, all dated within the last 6 months. As I prepared to leave, Grandma Ruth stopped me at the door. "There's something else you should know. A few weeks ago, I saw Melody here with your father. They were in his car arguing about something. When they saw me watching from the window, they drove away quickly. Your father called later to say they'd been in the neighborhood and thought to visit, but decided I might be napping." "Did you hear what they were arguing about?" "Only fragments. Melody kept saying, 'It's not enough,' and your father responded with something about the house being the only option left. I thought it was strange at the time, but now it made terrible sense. Whatever financial hole Melody had dug herself into, it was deep enough that even a Bentley and monthly cash infusions weren't enough. They needed Grandma Ruth's house." I hugged my grandmother tightly before leaving, promising to return the next day with a lawyer I trusted. As I drove away, my phone rang. "Mom." "Berenice, where are you? You missed dinner and we were worried." I'd completely forgotten it was Tuesday, another family dinner night. "I'm sorry, Mom. A work emergency came up." "Well, your sister closed another huge deal today. We're celebrating. Your father opened champagne and everything. It's a shame you're too busy to support your family." The irony almost made me laugh. Too busy to support my family, I was the only one actually protecting this family, even if they didn't know it yet. "Congratulations to Melody," I managed. "I'll try to make it next week." As I hung up, I realized the investigation I'd started into Melody's fake real estate career had just become something much more serious. This wasn't just about forged commission statements anymore. This was about fraud, elder abuse, and the systematic draining of my grandmother's assets. The Bentley suddenly made perfect sense. It wasn't just a gift or a status symbol. It was purchased with stolen money funded by a forged mortgage on an elderly woman's home. And my parents were either complicit or willfully blind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Grandma Ruth alone in her house, afraid of her own failing memory and betrayed by her own son. I thought about Melody, whose lies had evolved from simple failures to criminal acts. And I thought about my parents, whose favoritism had created a monster they could no longer control. The family I'd grown up in, dysfunctional as it was about to implode, and I was the one holding the match. 3 days after discovering the forged mortgage documents, I found myself doing something I never thought I would, following my sister. The lawyer I'd consulted about Grandma Ruth's situation had advised gathering as much evidence as possible before confronting anyone. So on a Thursday evening, when Melody posted on social media that she was heading to a big client meeting, I decided to see where she really went. I parked my Honda down the street from my parents' house and waited. At 7:30, Melody emerged in a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her hair professionally styled diamonds glittering at her ears and throat. She slid into the Bentley with practiced ease and pulled out of the driveway. Following someone in Seattle traffic while trying to remain unnoticed proved challenging. I stayed 2 cars behind, grateful for my unremarkable sedan that blended into the evening commute. Melody drove confidently, heading not toward any commercial real estate district, but to the Fairmont Olympic Hotel downtown. I valeted my car and entered the lobby several minutes after her pulling out my phone to look busy while scanning the opulent space. I spotted her near the bar, but she wasn't alone. A man in his 50s wearing an expensive suit had his hand on her lower back as he guided her toward the elevator. Something about his face seemed familiar. I snapped a discreet photo with my phone, then found a chair with a view of the elevator bank. They returned to the lobby 45 minutes later. Melody's lipstick was freshly applied, but her hair was slightly mussed. The man handed her an envelope, kissed her cheek, and left through the main entrance. Melody headed for the ladies' room. My mind raced as I processed what I'd witnessed. The designer dress, the luxury hotel, the envelope that almost certainly contained cash. My sister wasn't meeting real estate clients. She was working as an escort. I slipped out before Melody emerged and sat in my car, hands shaking. Part of me wanted to drive away and pretend I'd never seen anything. But I couldn't ignore how the pieces fit together: the sudden wealth, the Bentley as a prop for attracting wealthy clients, the vague explanations about her exclusive clientele. Over the next week, I continued my surveillance. Melody's patterns became clear. 3 to 4 evenings a week, she'd dress in designer clothes and drive the Bentley to high-end hotels, restaurants, or private clubs. Sometimes she'd attend events on the arm of older men playing the role of girlfriend or business associate. Other times, the meetings were shorter, more transactional. I learned to recognize her regular clients: the silver-haired executive who preferred the Four Seasons, the divorced surgeon who took her to charity galas, the married politician who met her at a discreet boutique hotel in Bellevue. What surprised me most was how professional Melody appeared. This wasn't desperation or exploitation, it was a calculated business model. The Bentley wasn't just transportation, but part of her brand: successful, sophisticated, worth the premium price. Her real estate license provided the perfect cover story for her income and flexible schedule. Everything clicked into place one evening when I overheard a phone conversation. I'd followed her to a wine bar where she sat alone at a corner table, speaking quietly into her phone. The rate is $5,000 for the evening, 10 for overnight, she said in a businesslike tone I'd never heard her use before. Yes, the charity auction on Saturday. I'll need the dress details to coordinate. No, I don't discuss my other clients. Discretion is part of what you're paying for. As she negotiated, I noticed her checking a leather-bound planner filled with coded entries. This wasn't a woman in crisis making poor choices. This was an entrepreneur who'd found a lucrative niche and was exploiting it methodically. The revelation should have made me angry or disappointed. Instead, I felt a strange mix of admiration and concern. If Melody wanted to monetize her beauty and charm, that was her choice. The real issue was the lies, the stolen money from Grandma Ruth, and whatever had driven her to this point in the first place. My surveillance reached a turning point the following Tuesday. Melody met a client at the Columbia Tower Club, Seattle's most exclusive business venue. I couldn't follow her inside, but I waited in the lobby, reviewing the photos I'd taken over the past week. That's when I recognized him, the man from the first night at the Fairmont. I'd seen his face before, but not in person. He was Jonathan Hartley, my father's business partner in the construction supply company. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Hartley had been Dad's partner for 15 years. They golfed together, their families celebrated holidays together. His wife Linda had taught Melody piano when she was younger. I pulled up the company website on my phone, confirming what I'd suspected. Hartley was the chief financial officer, the one who handled all the money coming in and out of Dad's business, and he was paying my sister for escort services. My phone buzzed with a text from Melody. "Hey sis, wanna grab lunch tomorrow? My treat, haven't seen you in forever." The timing felt too coincidental. Had she spotted me, or was this just her guilty conscience reaching out? Either way, I agreed to meet her, knowing this might be my chance to understand what was really happening. The next day, we met at a waterfront restaurant where the lunch prices made me wince. Melody arrived in designer sunglasses and an outfit that screamed new money, kissing my cheek like we were close sisters who lunched regularly. "You look tired, Berenice," she said, studying me over her menu. "All work and no play as usual." "Just busy," I replied, watching her carefully. "How's the real estate business?" "Incredible. Actually, that's partly why I wanted to meet." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "I have a business proposition for you." My pulse quickened. "Oh, some of my clients are looking for discreet marketing services, off-the-book stuff for their personal brands. I thought with your expertise and my connections, we could create a nice little side business." I forced myself to remain neutral. What kind of clients? What kind of marketing? Successful men who need to maintain certain images, online reputation management, social media curation, that sort of thing. They pay very well for privacy and quality. She was trying to recruit me into her world, perhaps, as a way to launder money or legitimize her operation. The offer was carefully worded, but the subtext was clear. "I appreciate the thought," I said slowly, "but I'm pretty committed to my current job." Her expression hardened slightly. "Of course you are. Perfect Berenice, always following the rules. Do you ever get tired of it? Being the good daughter while getting nothing in return." The bitterness in her voice caught me off guard. For a moment, I saw past the designer facade to something rawer underneath. "Is that what this is about?" I asked quietly. "Getting what you think you deserve?" She laughed, but it was hollow. "You have no idea what I deserve, what I've had to do to get even a fraction of the attention you get just for existing. Do you know what it's like to constantly compete with a ghost? Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect life. Even when I fail, I have to fail spectacularly just to be seen. So you became an escort." The words hung between us. Melody's face went pale, then flushed red. "How long have you been following me?" Her voice was deadly quiet. "Long enough. Melody, whatever's happening, we can figure it out together. But the lies, the money from Grandma Ruth—" "You know about that, too." She looked genuinely shocked. "God, of course you do. Perfect Berenice, solving everyone's problems. You couldn't just leave it alone, could you?" Grandma Ruth came to me scared and confused. What was I supposed to do? Melody's composure finally cracked. "You were supposed to mind your own business. You have no idea what I'm dealing with, what I owe, who I owe it to. The escort work was supposed to be temporary, just until I could pay off. But it's never enough. They keep raising the interest, making new demands." "Who's they? Melody, what have you gotten yourself into?" But she was already standing, throwing cash on the table. "Stay out of it, Berenice. I mean it. You think you're helping, but you're just making everything worse. And stay away from Jonathan Hartley. He's not who you think he is." She left in a cloud of expensive perfume, leaving me with more questions than answers. The Bentley wasn't just a prop for her escort work. It was a symptom of something deeper, something dangerous enough to make my fearless sister afraid. That evening, I compiled everything I'd discovered: the forged mortgage, the escort service, Jonathan Hartley's involvement. The picture forming was of a family in crisis, each member keeping secrets that threatened to destroy them all. But Melody's warning echoed in my mind. Who exactly was Jonathan Hartley? And what did he have to do with my sister's desperate situation? The answer to that question would prove to be the key to everything, unlocking a conspiracy that went far beyond family favoritism or sibling rivalry. The Bentley, I realized, wasn't just a gift or a business tool. It was a rolling symbol of every lie, every betrayal, every desperate choice that had brought my family to the brink of destruction. And we were about to go over the edge. The day after my lunch with Melody, I couldn't focus on work. Her words kept echoing in my mind. You have no idea what I owe, who I owe it to. The fear in her eyes had been real, cutting through all her bravado and designer armor. My sister was in serious trouble, and despite everything I needed to help her, I decided to confront her privately, away from our parents and the toxic dynamics of family dinners. I texted her that evening. We need to talk, just us. No judgment, I promise. She responded an hour later. My apartment tomorrow, noon. Come alone. I'd never been to Melody's new place. She'd moved out of our parents' house 6 months ago, claiming she needed space for her growing business. The address she sent led me to a luxury high-rise in Belltown, complete with a doorman and marble lobby. The rent here had to be astronomical. Melody answered her door looking nothing like the polished woman from yesterday's lunch. She wore sweatpants and an old college t-shirt, her face bare of makeup, eyes puffy from crying or lack of sleep. Come in, she said quietly, leading me into an apartment that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased Elliott Bay, while the interior featured professional staging that looked straight out of Architectural Digest. This wasn't just expensive, it was oligarch-level luxury. Nice place, I said carefully. It's not mine. She collapsed onto a white leather sofa. Nothing is really mine. The car, the clothes, this apartment. It's all borrowed time. I sat across from her, maintaining distance, but trying to project safety. Talk to me, Mel. What happened? Start from the beginning. She laughed bitterly. The beginning. Which one? When Mom and Dad started comparing me to you in kindergarten, when I failed out of college the first time and saw the disappointment in their eyes, or when I discovered that no matter what I achieved, it would never be enough because I wasn't you. This isn't about me, I said gently. This is about you being in trouble. Let me help. You can't. She pulled her knees to her chest, looking younger than her 25 years. Nobody can. I'm in too deep. Try me. What started all this? The real story, not the real estate fantasy. Melody stared out at the water for a long moment before speaking. It started with poker. Private games, invitation only. I met some people at a party who said I had a good poker face, that I could make real money if I learned to play properly. It felt like something that was mine, not academic like you, but strategic. Smart in a different way. I nodded, encouraging her to continue. At first, I was good, really good. I won enough to impress Mom and Dad, told them it was from real estate. They were so happy to finally have a success story about me. But then, she trailed off, picking at a thread on her shirt. You started losing. The games got bigger, higher stakes. The people running them offered credit, said I was too talented to let a temporary cash flow problem stop me. I thought I could win it back. Classic gambler's fallacy, right? But each loss just made me more desperate to prove I could do it. How much do you owe, Melody? She looked at me with haunted eyes. 200,000, with interest probably more now, and these aren't the kind of people who accept payment plans. The number staggered me. No wonder she'd turned to escort work and participated in defrauding Grandma Ruth. Who are these people exactly? I don't know their real names. They operate through intermediaries, run illegal gambling operations all over the Pacific Northwest. But lately, things changed. They stopped being patient about the money, started making threats, and then she stood abruptly, pacing to the window. They found out about my real estate license, said I could work off some of the debt by doing them favors, using vacant properties for their operations, temporary stash houses, meeting places. I thought it would reduce what I owed, but instead they said it was just covering the interest. My blood ran cold. Melody, that's money laundering. You could go to prison. You think I don't know that? She whirled to face me, tears streaming, but what choice did I have? They knew where Mom and Dad lived. They had photos of you going to work. The message was clear: cooperate or watch my family suffer. I thought about the short-term rental webpage I'd glimpsed on her computer. It hadn't been about running illegal Airbnbs, but something far worse. And the escort work. My idea, trying to make enough to pay them off and get out. Some clients pay in cash, no traces. Jonathan Hartley was actually trying to help in his own twisted way. Help how? Melody sat back down, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. He's been embezzling from Dad's company, has been for years. He recognized a kindred spirit, I guess, someone else living a double life. He pays me extra to keep quiet about seeing him with other women, thinks I don't know about the embezzlement, but I've recorded everything. Melody, this is insane. You're blackmailing Dad's business partner while being blackmailed yourself by criminals. I'm trying to survive, she exploded. You think I wanted any of this? You think I dreamed of being a call girl laundering money for gangsters? I wanted to be successful like you, to make Mom and Dad proud just once. But every time I tried, I failed, and every failure just pushed me deeper into this hole. We need to go to the police, I said firmly. With what evidence that implicates me in prostitution, money laundering, and blackmail, they'll arrest me before I finish talking. And even if they believe me, these people have connections everywhere. There's no witness protection program for gambling debts. Then what's your plan? Keep juggling all these lies until something breaks. I don't have a plan. She was sobbing now, mascara-free eyes red and swollen. I wake up every day terrified. The Bentley was supposed to make me look successful enough that they'd give me more time. Mom and Dad were so eager to believe I'd finally made it, they never questioned where the money came from. But it's not enough. It's never enough. I moved to sit beside her, pulling my sister into a hug for the first time in years. She resisted at first, then collapsed against me, crying like the scared young woman she was beneath all the designer armor. We'll figure this out, I murmured, though I had no idea how. But first we need to protect Grandma Ruth. The mortgage fraud? I didn't know about that until after. Melody pulled back, wiping her eyes. Dad came up with it on his own, said he needed capital to save the business, that Hartley's embezzlement had created a cash crisis. I think he knows about my debts somehow, and he's trying to fix everything with money like always. Does Mom know any of this? Mom lives in a fantasy where both her daughters are perfect. She'd rather believe lies than face the truth that our family is falling apart. We sat in silence, the weight of revelation settling over us. My sister wasn't just a spoiled brat making bad choices. She was trapped in a web of criminal threats, family dysfunction, and escalating desperation. The Bentley, the luxury apartment, the escort persona were all attempts to project success while drowning in failure. There's something else, Melody said quietly. The people I owe money to, they're connected to something bigger. International, money laundering, human trafficking, drugs. I overheard things I shouldn't have. Even if I could pay them back, I'm not sure they'd let me walk away. I know too much. Then we definitely need help, professional help. There are lawyers who specialize in, with what money everything I have goes to them, or maintaining this facade. I can't even afford to run anymore. A thought occurred to me. The recordings of Hartley, the evidence of his embezzlement. What if we use that as leverage, not for money, but for protection? Melody looked at me with a glimmer of hope. You mean expose him unless he helps us? I mean, give him a choice. Help us deal with these people or we turn everything over to the FBI. He must have connections, resources, and he's already compromised, so he can't claim moral high ground. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was something. For the first time that afternoon, Melody managed a weak smile. Look at perfect Berenice plotting blackmail. Maybe we're more alike than I thought. We're sisters, I said simply. That has to mean something even after everything. She nodded, fresh tears falling. I'm sorry for all of it. The jealousy, the lies, letting mom and dad pit us against each other. You didn't deserve any of it. We'll have time for apologies later. Right now, we need to focus on keeping you alive and out of prison. As I prepared to leave, Melody handed me a flash drive. Everything's on there. Recordings, documents, names, and dates. If something happens to me— Nothing's going to happen to you, I interrupted. We're going to fix this. But as I rode the elevator down from her borrowed luxury apartment, I wondered if that was a promise I could keep. The threads connecting my family's destruction were more tangled than I'd imagined: gambling debts, embezzlement, fraud, organized crime. And at the center of it all was my sister trying desperately to matter in a family that had taught her she never would. The Bentley waited in the parking garage, gleaming under fluorescent lights like a beautiful lie. In trying to save herself, Melody had only accelerated her destruction. Now it was up to me to either save her or watch everything collapse. The flash drive felt heavy in my pocket as I drove home carrying the weight of secrets that could destroy multiple lives. Tomorrow, I would have to decide what to do with them. Tonight, I just grieved for the sister I'd never really known and the family that had failed us both. 2 days after my conversation with Melody, I decided it was time to bring our parents into the loop. I'd spent those days reviewing the contents of the flash drive, consulting with lawyers, and trying to formulate a plan that might save my sister without destroying our entire family. The evidence was damning, but also potentially life-saving if handled correctly. I called my mother on Thursday morning. We need to have a family meeting. All of us. It's important. Oh, how wonderful. Mom's voice brightened immediately. Are you finally seeing someone? Is this about an engagement? The assumption stung as if my only important news could be about finding a man. No, Mom. It's about Melody and the family finances. We need to talk this Sunday after dinner. Finances. Berenice, that's your father's area, and Melody's doing wonderfully with her real estate. Mom, please, just make sure everyone's there, including Melody. I could hear the shift in her tone from excited to defensive. You're not going to start criticizing your sister again, are you? Because I won't have it. That girl has worked so hard to find her path. I'm trying to help her, Mom. Trust me, please. She agreed reluctantly, and I spent the next 3 days preparing. I organized the evidence, carefully documentation of the mortgage fraud proof of Hartley's embezzlement, and a sanitized version of Melody's situation that omitted the most legally compromising details. My goal was to present enough truth to force action without sending my sister to prison. Sunday arrived, gray and drizzling, matching my mood. I arrived at my parents' house early, finding Melody already there, nervously shredding napkins at the dining table. She looked fragile, wearing a simple sweater instead of her usual designer armor. Did you tell them anything? I asked quietly. No, I could barely get through dinner. Dad kept talking about expanding the business, maybe buying a vacation home. Mom showed me paint samples for redecorating. They have no idea their world is about to implode. Our parents bustled around, clearing dinner dishes and preparing coffee. Dad looked tired but satisfied, the picture of a successful businessman enjoying his Sunday evening. Mom hummed while she arranged dessert plates, lost in her perpetual optimism. So, Dad said, settling into his leather armchair with coffee, what's this meeting about? Your mother mentioned finances? Having trouble with your investments, Berenice? The assumption that I must be the one with problems almost made me laugh. No, Dad, we need to talk about family finances, all of them, including the second mortgage on Grandma Ruth's house. The room went silent. Dad's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. Mom's humming stopped abruptly. "What are you talking about?" Dad's voice was carefully controlled, but I saw his knuckles whiten around the cup. I pulled out the mortgage documents. These were sent to Grandma Ruth, a $300,000 loan against her house with her forged signature. She scared and confused Dad. She trusted you. "How dare you?" Mom stood abruptly, her face flushing. "Accusing your father of this is ridiculous." "It's not an accusation, it's a fact." I kept my voice level, professional. "I've had the signatures analyzed. They're forgeries. The only question is why." Dad set down his coffee with deliberate calm. "Your grandmother is getting older, Berenice. Sometimes she forgets things she's agreed to. I've been managing her finances to help her with her full consent." "She has early-stage memory issues," I agreed, watching him carefully. "Which you knew about and used against her. That's elder abuse, Dad." "Berenice." Mom's voice was shrill. "How can you say such things? Your father has done everything for this family, including embezzlement." I pulled out more documents. "Because Jonathan Hartley has been stealing from your company for years, and either you know about it or you're willfully blind." Dad's face drained of color. "That's impossible. Jonathan is my partner, my friend." "Jonathan is also one of Melody's clients." I let that sink in, watching the horror dawn on my parents' faces. She has recordings of him discussing the embezzlement, among other things. All eyes turned to Melody, who seemed to shrink in her chair. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she whispered. "What is she talking about?" Mom demanded, looking between us. "Melody, what clients? Your real estate clients?" This was the moment of truth. I took a deep breath. "Melody doesn't have real estate clients, Mom. She's been working as an escort to pay off gambling debts to dangerous people. The Bentley, the apartment, all of it is funded by—" "A liar." Mom's scream cut through my words. She launched herself at me, and I barely managed to step back before she could make contact. "You've always been jealous of her, always trying to tear her down." "Mom, it's true," Melody said quietly, tears streaming. "All of it. I'm so sorry." "No." Mom shook her head violently, her carefully styled hair coming loose. "No, my daughter is not she's successful. She's finally successful." Dad hadn't moved, staring at Melody with an expression I'd never seen before. "How much do you owe?" he asked quietly. 200,000, maybe more with interest. And these people, they're the ones who... They threatened the family if I didn't cooperate. I've been using vacant properties for their operations, Dad. I'm in so deep I can't see the bottom anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom had collapsed back into her chair, looking between her daughters like she'd never seen us before. Dad's hands trembled as he reached for his coffee mist and knocked the cup over. Brown liquid spread across the white tablecloth like an accusation. "This is your fault," Mom said suddenly, pointing at me. "You've poisoned her against us." Filled her head with what, Mom? Reality? I couldn't keep the frustration out of my voice. "Melody needs help, not denial. She needs rehab for gambling addiction, legal representation, and protection from the people threatening her. Instead, you bought her a Bentley with stolen money." "We didn't steal anything. That house will be ours anyway. When Dad caught himself, but the damage was done. When she dies, I finished. Were you just too impatient to wait? Or did you need the money now to cover for Hartley's embezzlement?" "You don't understand business," Dad blustered. "Sometimes you have to make hard choices to protect the company, the employees." By defrauding your own mother, the argument escalated. Voices rising, accusations flying. Mom alternated between defending Melody and blaming me. Dad tried to justify his actions with increasing desperation. Melody sat silent, tears falling steadily. Then Dad clutched his chest. At first I thought it was dramatics, an attempt to end the conversation. But his face went gray sweat beading on his forehead. He gasped, reaching for something, anything, and found only empty air. "Richard!" Mom screamed, rushing to him as he slumped in the chair. Call 911, I ordered Melody, who sat frozen. Now. The next minutes blurred together. Paramedics arriving, Dad on a stretcher, Mom hysterical. Melody and I followed the ambulance to the hospital, sitting in tense silence in my car. Is this my fault? Melody asked as we pulled into the hospital parking lot. No, I said firmly. This is the result of years of lies and denial. Dad's health, the stress of the business, failing it, was already there. We just forced it into the open. In the cardiac unit waiting room, Mom refused to look at either of us. When the doctor emerged hours later, he explained that Dad had suffered a mild heart attack, likely brought on by stress and an underlying condition he'd been ignoring. He's stable, the doctor assured us, but he needs to make serious lifestyle changes, reduce stress, address any ongoing anxiety issues. I almost laughed at the irony. Reduce stress while his business crumbled, his mother prepared to press charges, and his daughter faced both criminals and law enforcement. As we sat in that sterile waiting room, the magnitude of our family's situation settled over me. The confrontation had gone worse than I'd imagined. Instead of rallying together to help Melody, we'd fractured completely. Dad was in a hospital bed, Mom was in denial, and Melody looked like she might bolt at any moment. But there was no turning back now. The truth was out, messy and painful and destructive. The question was whether we'd survive it as a family, or whether this was the disaster that would finally tear us apart permanently. Looking at my mother's rigid back and my sister's haunted face, I suspected I already knew the answer. The fluorescent lights in the hospital waiting room hummed with a persistence that made my head throb. 3 days had passed since Dad's heart attack, and I'd barely left the hospital. He was stable but refusing visitors except for Mom, who maintained a stone-cold silence toward Melody and me. My sister had retreated into herself, showing up for a few hours each day before disappearing to what I assumed were more client meetings she couldn't afford to cancel. It was Tuesday morning when my phone rang with a call that would shift everything into overdrive. The name on the screen read Margaret Chen, the elder law attorney I'd contacted about Grandma Ruth's situation. Berenice, we need to meet immediately. Her voice was tense. There have been developments. Can you come to my office? I glanced at Melody, who was staring blankly at a months-old magazine in the waiting room. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Margaret's office was in a converted Victorian in Capitol Hill, all original hardwood and modern efficiency. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. Your grandmother came to see me yesterday. She began, sliding a folder across her mahogany desk. She wants to pursue charges, all of them. Fraud, forgery, elder abuse. She's lucid, she's angry, and she has documentation I haven't seen from you. My stomach dropped. What documentation? Apparently, she's been keeping her own records for months. She suspected something was wrong long before the mortgage papers arrived. She has recordings, Berenice. Your father discussing her mental decline with someone planning how to gain control of her assets. I opened the folder with trembling hands. Transcripts of conversations, bank records, showing suspicious transfers, even photographs of Dad removing documents from Grandma Ruth's house when he thought she was napping. She's sharper than anyone gave her credit for, Margaret continued. The memory issues are real but minor. She's been playing them up to see what your father would do. It was a test, and he failed spectacularly. If she files charges, your father will likely face prison time. The evidence is overwhelming, but there's more. Margaret pulled out another document. In researching the mortgage fraud, we discovered your father's business is in worse shape than you knew. He's been taking loans from questionable sources using the company as collateral. Some of these lenders have connections to organized crime. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. The same people Melody owes money to. We can't be certain, but the timing suggests a connection. Your father might have tried to broker a deal they fund his business. He helps them through his daughter's access to properties. When that wasn't enough, he went after your grandmother's house. I thought about Dad lying in his hospital bed, monitors beeping, completely unaware that his empire of lies was crumbling. What about Jonathan Hartley? Margaret's expression darkened. That's where it gets complicated. I've been in touch with the FBI. They've been investigating Hartley for months. Your sister's recordings aren't news to them, but they are valuable corroboration. They want to meet with her. If she talks to them, she'll implicate herself. Not necessarily. If she cooperates fully, provides evidence about the money laundering operation, there's potential for immunity. But she needs to decide quickly. These situations have a narrow window before someone gets spooked and everyone lawyers up. I left Margaret's office with a briefcase full of documents and a head full of impossibilities. How could I convince my sister to trust the FBI when she barely trusted me? How could I protect my father from prison while ensuring justice for Grandma Ruth? How could I hold together a family that seemed determined to self-destruct? Back at the hospital, I found Melody in the cafeteria, picking at a salad she clearly had no intention of eating. I sat across from her and quietly explained everything Margaret had told me. But the FBI, her voice was barely a whisper. Berenice, I can't. These people will kill me if they think I'm talking to the feds. They'll kill you anyway if you can't pay. At least this way you have protection. You don't understand. She glanced around nervously. Some of the properties I gave them access to, things happened there. Bad things. I could be accessory to... To what, Melody? She shook her head, unable or unwilling to say the words. But I could fill in the blanks. Drug deals, human trafficking, worse. My sister had opened doors to monsters, and now those monsters owned her. That evening, I made a decision that would have been unthinkable a week ago. I called Jonathan Hartley. He answered on the third ring, his voice cautious. Berenice, I heard about your father. How is he? Alive. Which is more than you'll be able to say about your career when the FBI finishes with you. The silence stretched between us before he responded. I see Melody shared our arrangement. She shared everything, Jonathan. The embezzlement, the escort services, all of it. But I'm willing to make a deal. I'm listening. You're going to help my sister. Use whatever connections you have to negotiate with her creditors. Get her free of these people. In exchange, we'll give you 48 hours before we turn everything over to the FBI. Enough time to run hide whatever cockroaches do when the lights come on. That's not enough time to... It's more than you deserve. Melody has a meeting scheduled with her handlers tomorrow night. You're going to be there with enough money to buy her freedom. I don't care where you get it. You're asking me to put myself in danger for the woman you've been paying for sex, for the family you've been stealing from. Yes, Jonathan, that's exactly what I am asking. Consider it your penance. Another long silence. And if I refuse? Then I call the FBI tonight and agents will be at your door before you finish packing. The laugh that came through the phone was bitter. You're not the sweet, naive daughter Richard always described. Fine, send me the details. But Berenice, you're playing with forces you don't understand. These people don't negotiate. They own or they destroy. There's no middle ground. Then you better be convincing. After I hung up, I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage, shaking. I just blackmailed a criminal to save another criminal while my father lay dying and my grandmother prepared to send him to prison. This wasn't how families were supposed to work. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Your father is awake. He's asking for you. I found Dad propped up in his hospital bed, looking fragile and older than his 58 years. The monitors beeped steadily, tracking his damaged heart. Berenice, he said, his voice hoarse, your mother told me what happened at the house, what you said. Hey, Dad! Is it true, all of it? I met his eyes, seeing fear there I'd never witnessed before. Yes. He closed his eyes, a single tear tracking down his cheek. I just wanted to provide for my family. When Jonathan started skimming, I should have stopped him, but we needed the money. The business was failing, had been for years. I kept thinking one more deal, One more loan and I could fix everything. Why didn't you ask for help? From who you? His laugh was bitter. Perfect Berenice, who never needed anything, or Melody, who needed everything. I was supposed to be the provider, the success story. Instead, I became a criminal. I finished quietly. Dad, Grandma Ruth is pressing charges. You need a lawyer. His eyes snapped open. My mother is... He couldn't finish, his monitor spiking with his heart rate. She knows everything, has known for months. She's been documenting it all. The look of betrayal on his face was almost too much to bear. He'd thought he was deceiving a vulnerable old woman only to discover she'd been gathering evidence of his betrayal the entire time. And Melody, he asked finally. I'm trying to save her. But Dad, you need to know something. The people you borrowed money from, they're the same ones threatening her. You made a deal with devils, and now we're all paying the price. He turned his face away, but not before I saw the devastation there. In trying to save his family, he destroyed it. The man who'd built a business from nothing had torn down everything that mattered in his desperation to preserve an illusion of success. As I left his room, I passed Mom in the hallway. She looked at me with eyes swollen from crying. Are you happy now? She asked. You've destroyed everything. No, Mom, I'm trying to save what's left. But even as I said it, I wondered if there was anything left to save. Tomorrow, Melody would meet with criminals while wearing a wire. Jonathan would attempt to negotiate with people who didn't negotiate. The FBI would close in on all of them. And somewhere in the wreckage, I'd try to find pieces of my family worth preserving. The Bentley was still in the hospital parking lot, where Melody had left it gleaming under the security lights. Soon it would be evidence in multiple criminal cases. But tonight, it was just an expensive reminder of how far we'd fallen and how much further we had to go. The meeting was set for Thursday night at a warehouse in Georgetown, an industrial area south of downtown Seattle. Melody sat in my apartment that afternoon, hands shaking as she held the FBI recording device that looked like an expensive pen. I can't do this, she said for the 10th time. They'll know. They always know. Special Agent Sarah Kim, a compact woman with sharp eyes, checked the device again. The technology is undetectable. Just keep it in your pocket or purse. We'll be monitoring everything from a van 2 blocks away. And Jonathan, I asked, still uncomfortable with trusting my father's corrupt partner. He's agreed to wear a wire as well, Agent Kim confirmed. We've been tracking these people for 18 months. Your sister's cooperation could be the break we need. Melody laughed bitterly. Cooperation! Like I have a choice! The past 2 days had been a whirlwind of legal negotiations. In exchange for her full cooperation, Melody would receive immunity for the money laundering charges, but would still face consequences for the escort services. It was the best deal we could get. What exactly do these people want? I asked Agent Kim. Based on our intelligence, they're expanding operations. They need more properties, more legitimate fronts. Your sister has been useful, but she's also become a liability. Someone who owes that much money and knows that much about their operations. She didn't need to finish the thought. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Tell your sister we're watching. One wrong word and the whole family pays. Agent Kim took my phone immediately. They're escalating. This is good. Good. Melody stood abruptly. They're threatening my family and you think it's good. It means they're nervous. Nervous people make mistakes. That evening, as Melody prepared to leave for the meeting, she pulled me aside. If something happens... Nothing will happen, I interrupted. The FBI will be there. Jonathan will be there. You just need to play your part for a little longer. I need you to know something, she continued. Last month, I used one of the properties for something bad. Really bad. There was a girl, maybe 16. They were keeping her there before moving her somewhere else. I didn't know until I saw her, and by then it was too late to back out. I've been living with that every day. My heart broke for my sister. You were coerced, Melody. You were trying to survive. That doesn't make it right. That girl, she looked at me like I might help her and I just walked away. I left her there. Tears streamed down her face. Whatever happens tonight, I deserve it. No, I gripped her shoulders. You deserve a chance to make it right. That's what tonight is about. We're going to stop these people from hurting anyone else. She nodded, wiping her eyes and checking her appearance in the mirror. The designer clothes and perfect makeup were back-in-place armor for the battle ahead. At 8:30, Melody drove the Bentley out of my building's garage. I watched from my apartment window as the luxury car disappeared into Seattle's night traffic, followed at a discreet distance by an unmarked van. The next 2 hours were the longest of my life. I paced my apartment phone in hand, waiting for updates. Agent Kim had promised to text me when it was over, but the silence stretched endlessly. At 10:45, my phone finally rang. Unknown number. Hello. Bernice Caldwell. The voice was male-accented, unfamiliar. Yes. Your sister had an accident. Very unfortunate. The Bentley is not as safe as advertised. The line went dead. I immediately called Agent Kim, but it went straight to voicemail. Melody's phone did the same. My hands trembled as I grabbed my car keys and raced to the garage. The drive to Georgetown was a blur of red lights ignored and speed limits shattered. I found the warehouse district blocked off by police cars and emergency vehicles. The Bentley was visible in the distance, wrapped around a concrete pillar, its front end completely destroyed. Ma'am, you can't be here, an officer said, stopping me as I tried to push forward. That's my sister's car, Where is she? Are you Berenice? Agent Kim appeared beside the officer. Her professional composure was cracked stress evident in every line of her face. Come with me. She led me to a mobile command unit where monitors showed various angles of the destroyed Bentley. Your sister is alive. She's at Harborview Medical Center with minor injuries. The crash was staged. Staged? When she arrived at the warehouse, it was empty except for Jonathan Hartley's body. He'd been dead for hours, tortured. They knew about the FBI surveillance. This whole thing was a message. I sank into a chair, the weight of failure crushing. Where's Melody now? In protective custody at the hospital. But Berenice, there's more. We found something in the Bentley's hidden compartment. Drugs enough to put your sister away for 20 years. They planted them probably, planning to tip us off after the crash. Can you prove they were planted? Your sister's cooperation gives us leverage, but it's complicated. The criminals she's been dealing with have connections we're still mapping. This goes higher than Seattle, possibly international. My phone buzzed with another unknown number. Against Agent Kim's protests, I answered, Your family has caused us significant inconvenience, the same accented voice said. The debt has now doubled, $400,000 plus interest, and we require continued access to properties. Your sister knows how to contact us. She's done. We're done. You'll get nothing from us. Then you'll get nothing but tragedy. Your father is still in the hospital. Yes, your mother visits him every day at predictable times. Your grandmother lives alone in a big house. So many vulnerabilities. If you touch any of them, you'll what? Call the FBI. We both know how that worked out. You have 72 hours to convince your sister to resume her duties. The debt must be paid one way or another. The line went dead again. Agent Kim had been recording. This is good. They're making direct threats now. We can increase protection for your family. Can you stop them? She hesitated, and in that pause, I heard the truth. They could protect us temporarily, but these people were like water finding every crack, every weakness. The FBI had lost their inside track when the criminals discovered the surveillance. Now we were all exposed. I drove to the hospital in a daze. Melody lay in a bed, bandaged but alert, an FBI agent stationed outside her door. When she saw me, fresh tears started. I'm so sorry, she whispered. Jonathan's dead because of me. They killed him just to make a point. This isn't your fault, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. Every choice had led us deeper into darkness. Did you know he had a daughter? Melody asked. 17 years old. She's gonna grow up knowing her father died because he tried to help a prostitute pay off gambling debts. He died because he was a criminal who got involved with worse criminals, I corrected. And you're not a prostitute. You're my sister, and we're gonna get through this. But as I sat in that hospital room, listening to the monitors beep and watching the FBI agent pace outside, I wondered if we really would. The criminals had made their power clear. They could reach us anywhere, anytime. The Bentley crash was just a warning shot. In 3 days, they expected Melody to return to work for them, deeper in debt, and with no way out. The FBI offered protection, but no solutions. Our father faced prison if he survived his heart condition. Our mother lived in denial. And Grandma Ruth waited in her big house unaware she'd become a potential target. The family I'd tried so hard to save was now in more danger than ever. And I was out of moves, out of plans, and running out of hope. Looking at my sister's bruised face, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. If the law couldn't protect us, we'd have to protect ourselves, even if it meant becoming criminals too. The Bentley was totaled, but its dark purpose lived on. We were all driving toward destruction now, and I couldn't see any way to stop. Friday morning arrived with unexpected clarity. The rain had stopped and Seattle's skyline glittered under rare winter sunshine. But inside the FBI field office, the atmosphere was anything but bright. Agent Kim had called an emergency meeting, and I sat at a conference table surrounded by federal agents' lawyers, and my sister, who looked smaller than ever, in an oversized FBI windbreaker. The situation has evolved. Agent Kim began pulling up photos on a large screen. Jonathan Hartley's murder has given us something we didn't have before: leverage. His files contained extensive documentation of the organization's money laundering operations, including names, dates, and amounts. Files he was keeping as insurance? Another agent added. Looks like he was planning his own exit strategy. I studied the photos of ledgers and encrypted drives. How does this help us? Your sister identified several key players from these records, Agent Kim explained. People she's seen at property handoffs. With this information, we can move on the entire network, not just the Seattle cell. Melody shifted uncomfortably. They'll know it came from me. These aren't people who forgive. Which is why we're proposing something unprecedented. A man in an expensive suit entered the room. I'm Deputy Director Marcus Webb. We want to use your family's situation as bait. Excuse me, I stood, anger flaring. Haven't we been through enough? Hear me out, Webb continued calmly. These criminals expect your sister to return to work. They've made threats against your family. What if we use that? Create a controlled scenario where they expose themselves. You want to use us as bait, I repeated flatly. We want to end this. Your grandmother's house, the one your father tried to mortgage. We could use it as a honeypot. Stage a family gathering, make it known your sister will be there with money to pay off debts. When they come to collect, you arrest them, Melody finished, and probably get us all killed in the crossfire. We'd have SWAT teams positioned, full surveillance, every precaution. Like you had at the warehouse, I interrupted. How did that work out? The room fell silent. Agent Kim finally spoke. There was a leak. We've identified and removed the source. This operation would be completely compartmentalized. I looked at my sister, seeing the exhaustion and fear she'd been carrying for months. What do you think? I think I'm tired of running, she said quietly. If this could end it, really end it, then maybe... There's one more thing, Webb added. Your father's been asking to see federal prosecutors. He wants to make a deal. My heart sank. Dad trying to maneuver even from a hospital bed. What kind of deal? His full confession about the mortgage fraud in exchange for helping us prosecute the larger organization. He claims to have information about their legitimate business fronts. The irony was staggering. My father, who'd started this cascade of disasters, now wanted to play hero by turning informant. That afternoon, I visited Dad in the hospital. He'd been moved from cardiac care to a regular room, a good sign medically, if not legally. Mom sat beside him, maintaining her cold silence toward me. Berenice? Dad said, his voice stronger than before. I heard about Melody, about Jonathan. I'm so sorry. Your sorry doesn't fix anything, I replied, too exhausted for tact. The FBI says you want to make a deal. Mom's head snapped up. What deal, Richard? What is she talking about? Dad wouldn't meet her eyes. I know things, Linda, about where the organization keeps their money, which businesses they own, information that could help end this. Information you have because you were involved, I stated. I was desperate. The business was failing and they offered solutions. I didn't know how deep it went until too late. You knew enough to forge your mother's signature and steal her equity. His face crumpled. I've destroyed everything, haven't I? My mother, my daughters, my marriage, all for pride and the inability to admit failure. Stop it, Mom snapped. Stop this self-pity. We can fix this. We always fix things. Not this time, I said gently. Mom Melody's in protective custody. Grandma Ruth is pressing charges. The FBI wants to use our family as bait to catch international criminals. There's no fixing this with denial and shopping trips. Mom stood abruptly, her composure finally shattering. This is your fault. If you hadn't been so perfect, so independent, maybe Melody wouldn't have felt the need to become a criminal. That's on me. You never needed us. Mom screamed, months of suppressed emotion exploding. From the time you were little, you did everything yourself. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect life. You made us unnecessary. So we focused on Melody, gave her what you never seemed to want. And now you judge us for it. The accusation hit harder than any physical blow. In all my anger about being overlooked, I'd never considered that my independence might have been interpreted as rejection. I needed you, I said quietly. I just learned not to show it because every time I did, Melody needed you more. So I became self-sufficient out of necessity, not choice. And we failed you. Dad's words were barely audible. We failed both of you in different ways. Linda, stop blaming Berenice. This is our fault. We created this dynamic, fostered this competition, and now our daughters are paying the price. Mom collapsed back into her chair, sobbing. For the first time in my life, I saw my parents not as authority figures or sources of frustration, but as flawed humans who'd made terrible choices out of misguided love. That evening, I met with Grandma Ruth at her house. She'd agreed to the FBI's plan, showing the steel spine I'd always admired. If using my home can end this nightmare, then use it, she said firmly. But I have conditions. What conditions? Your father goes to prison. I won't withdraw the charges. He betrayed my trust in the worst possible way. Grandma, he's my son and I love him, she continued, but love doesn't mean enabling criminal behavior. He needs to face consequences or he'll never change. What about Mom? She had nothing to do with the fraud. Grandma Ruth's expression softened slightly. Your mother chose blindness, which is its own kind of guilt, but I won't pursue charges against her. She'll have enough to deal with when your father is gone. We spent the next hour reviewing the FBI's plan. The false family gathering would be Sunday evening, ostensibly a celebration of Dad's recovery and Melody's return home. Word would leak through channels the criminals monitored. Melody would arrive with a briefcase of marked bills, claiming she'd liquidated everything to pay her debts. And then, Grandma Ruth asked, then we wait for them to make their move. The house will be surrounded, every entrance covered. When they come for the money, we spring the trap. Grandma Ruth nodded approvingly, just like catching rats, although I suspect rats have more honor than these people. As I drove home that night, I thought about the strange turn our family tragedy had taken. We'd gone from victims to volunteers, from prey to bait. The Bentley was gone, but its purpose lived on in this final gambit. In 48 hours, everything would be decided. Either the FBI would successfully capture the criminal network or my family would face retaliation beyond imagination. There was no middle ground, no room for error. I'd started this journey trying to save my sister from her bad choices. Now I was helping orchestrate a sting operation that could get us all killed. But Melody had been right about one thing we were tired of running. It was time to make a stand, even if that stand was in my grandmother's living room with federal agents hiding in the closets. The criminals wanted their money and their pound of flesh. Instead, they'd get a dose of justice served family style. And maybe, if we survived, we could start rebuilding from the ashes of our collective destruction. Sunday arrived with an ominous stillness. The FBI had spent Saturday transforming Grandma Ruth's house into a sophisticated trap. Hidden cameras covered every angle, motion sensors tracked movement in the yard, and SWAT teams waited in neighboring houses commandeered for the operation. But as I helped Melody prepare for her performance, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were missing something. Remember, Agent Kim coached for the 100th time. You arrive at 6:30. The briefcase stays visible. Don't open it unless they demand proof. We need them inside the house before we move. Melody nodded mechanically, adjusting the wire tape to her ribs. She'd lost weight over the past week, her designer clothes hanging loose on her frame. The confident escort who'd commanded $5,000 a night had been replaced by a frightened young woman who jumped at shadows. "What if they don't come?" she asked. "What if they know it's a trap?" "Then we try something else," I assured her, though I had no idea what that might be. "But they'll come. They want their money, and they want to punish you for cooperating with the FBI. Arrogance will bring them here." At 5 o'clock, family members began arriving for the fake celebration. Mom came alone, Dad still being too weak to leave the hospital. She dressed carefully, maintaining appearances, even as her world crumbled. She still wasn't speaking to me directly, but she hugged Melody tightly. "Whatever happens," Mom whispered to her, "I love you, both of you." It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement of me I'd gotten in days. Grandma Ruth played her role perfectly, the confused elderly woman happy to have family gathered. She'd even baked cookies, filling the house with homey aromas that clashed with the underlying tension. FBI agents posing as catering staff moved through the rooms, their eyes constantly scanning. At 6:25, Melody texted, "Leaving now." I watched from the window as the rental car pulled up. The Bentley was evidence now, but Melody had insisted on arriving in something expensive. "They need to believe I still have resources," she'd explained, so the FBI had procured a Mercedes complete with hidden cameras and tracking devices. She entered carrying a metallic briefcase, playing the part of the desperate daughter coming home. Her hands shook as she set it on the coffee table, and I didn't think it was entirely an act. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice carrying the perfect note of forced cheer. "I wanted to share some good news. I've resolved my business complications." We made small talk, everyone hyper-aware of their roles. The FBI listened through our wires, ready to storm in at the first sign of danger. 7 o'clock passed. Then 7:30. The tension ratcheted higher with each minute. At 7:45, Grandma Ruth's landline rang. We all froze. That number was unlisted, known only to family and close friends. "Should I answer?" Grandma Ruth asked, looking to Agent Kim, who stood disguised as a server. Kim nodded tersely. "Hello," Grandma Ruth's voice was steady. "Yes, she's here. Who's calling?" She held out the phone to Melody. "It's for you, dear. Someone named Victor." Melody's face went white. She took the phone with trembling hands. "Yes!" We couldn't hear the other side, but Melody's expression told us everything. "I understand," she said finally. "Yes, I'll come alone." She hung up and turned to us. "They know about all of it. The FBI, the trap, everything. They want me to leave now, drive the Mercedes north on I-5. They'll contact me with further instructions." "Absolutely not!" Agent Kim stepped forward, abandoning her cover. "That's not the plan." "The plan failed," Melody said flatly. They have someone watching the house right now. If I don't leave in 5 minutes, They showed me photos of a house on fire, with a family inside. They'll do it again if I don't comply. The room erupted in arguments. Agents spoke into radios trying to locate the observer. Mom cried. Grandma Ruth stood frozen, and in the chaos, Melody looked at me with a strange calm. I'm going, she said quietly. This is my mess. I won't let anyone else die for it. Melody, no. I love you, Berenice. Tell Dad I'm sorry. She grabbed the briefcase and headed for the door. Agents moved to stop her, but Deputy Director Webb's voice crackled over the radio. Let her go. We'll track her. All units prepare to follow. I ran after my sister, catching her at the Mercedes. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. She smiled sadly. For once in my life, I'm going to face the consequences instead of running. Maybe that's growth. Take this. I pressed my phone into her hand. Location services are on. We'll find you. She hugged me tightly, then slid into the driver's seat. I watched the Mercedes disappear into the Seattle twilight, followed by a parade of unmarked vehicles maintaining their distance. Back in the house, the FBI command center had taken over Grandma Ruth's dining room. Multiple screens tracked Melody's progress north on I-5. She drove steadily, following speed limits, playing her part. Incoming call to her phone, a technician announced. We heard Melody's voice through the speakers. Yes, I'm alone. Exit 126, the warehouse district again. Agent Kim coordinated units. She's heading back to Georgetown, same area as Thursday's ambush. It's a trap, I said. They're leading her back to where they killed Jonathan. We know, Webb replied grimly, but she's right. If we don't play this out, they'll retaliate against civilians. We have teams moving into position. The next 20 minutes felt like hours. We watched Melody's dot move through Seattle streets, getting closer to the warehouse district. The FBI vehicles hung back, trying not to spook the criminals. She's stopping, the technician reported. Corner of 4th and Michigan. The dash cam showed an empty street, industrial buildings looming in the darkness. Melody sat in the car for a moment, then emerged with a briefcase. Movement on the thermal cameras. Another agent called, 3 figures approaching from the north. We watched as 3 men materialized from the shadows surrounding my sister. One of them, tall with silver hair, appeared to be speaking. Melody held out the briefcase. Teams prepare to move on my signal, Webb commanded. Then everything went wrong. A 4th figure appeared behind Melody. We saw the gun too late. The shot was muffled but visible on the thermal imaging as a flash of heat. Melody crumpled. Move, 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 Webb screamed. The warehouse district erupted in chaos. FBI vehicles screeched onto the scene. The criminals scattered, but not before one grabbed the briefcase. Gunfire echoed through the speakers as agents engaged the fleeing suspects. Medical team to the target, Kim barked. Status on Melody Caldwell. The response made my knees buckle. Subject down, gunshot wound to the shoulder, conscious but losing blood. I was already running for my car when Agent Kim caught my arm. You can't go there. It's an active crime scene. That's my sister. And she's getting the best medical care possible. They're taking her to Harborview. I'll drive you. The ride to the hospital blurred past. Kim updated me between radio calls. 2 suspects in custody, 1 dead. The leader escaped with the briefcase. They'd discover soon enough it contained marked bills and tracking devices worthless for their purposes. At Harborview, I found myself in a horrifyingly familiar waiting room. Same fluorescent lights, same uncomfortable chairs, same fear that I was about to lose someone I loved despite everything between us. Mom arrived 15 minutes later, Dad insisting she come despite their own crisis. For once, she didn't assign blame or make accusations. She just held my hand as we waited. A doctor emerged after an hour. Melody Caldwell's family. We stood together, united in terror. She's stable, the doctor said, and I nearly collapsed with relief. The bullet passed through her shoulder, missing major arteries. She'll need surgery to repair muscle damage, but she'll make a full recovery. Can we see her? Mom asked. Briefly, she's sedated but conscious. Melody looked small in the hospital bed, her left shoulder heavily bandaged. Her eyes fluttered open when we entered. Did they get them? She whispered. Some of them, I told her. You were incredibly brave. No, she corrected weakly. I was just tired of being afraid. Is it over? I couldn't lie to her. Not yet, but you're safe. That's what matters. She smiled slightly. The Bentley's really totaled now, isn't it? Both the car and what it represented. All those lies, all that false success. Gone. Good riddance, Mom said firmly, surprising us both. You're worth more than any car, baby. Both of you are. As Melody drifted back to sleep, I realized she was right. The Bentley was truly destroyed now, along with the criminal life it had enabled. My sister had finally stopped running, faced her demons, and survived. But the leader of the criminal organization remained free, and we all knew this wasn't over. The crashed Bentley had become a symbol of our family's destruction. But maybe, just maybe, it could also represent the wreckage we were finally leaving behind. One thing was certain: when Melody recovered, we'd face whatever came next together. No more favorites, no more perfect daughters and problem children. Just a family broken but not beaten, ready to rebuild from the ashes of our past mistakes. Monday morning brought a strange new reality. With Melody in recovery, Dad still hospitalized, and Mom in shock, I found myself the only Caldwell capable of making decisions. The weight of that responsibility felt heavier than any burden I'd carried before. But somehow, I was ready for it. My first stop was the FBI field office, where Agent Kim and Deputy Director Webb waited with updates. The two captured criminals had provided valuable intelligence in exchange for plea deals, but Viktor Volkov, the organization's regional leader, remained at large. He's likely fled the country, Webb explained, showing me border crossing footage. But his network is crumbling. We've frozen accounts, raided properties, and arrested dozens of associates. Your sister's cooperation made this possible. What about the ongoing threats to my family? Significantly diminished, Kim assured me. Volkov's more concerned with saving himself than revenge. We'll maintain protective details for another month, but the immediate danger has passed. Relief flooded through me, but I knew our problems were far from over. What happens to Melody now? She'll need to testify when we catch Volkov. Until then, she's fulfilled her cooperation agreement. The escort charges... Kim paused delicately. Given the circumstances and her assistance, the prosecutor's office is willing to offer probation and community service. It was more than we could have hoped for. I thanked them and headed to my next battlefield dad's company. Caldwell Construction Supply sat in an industrial area of South Seattle, a complex of warehouses and offices that had once represented my father's American dream. Now, with Jonathan Hartley dead and Dad incapacitated, the business teetered on collapse. I used my key to enter the main office, finding chaos. Employees milled around, uncertainly, phones rang unanswered, and papers covered every surface. In the conference room, I found Frank Martinez, Dad's operations manager, trying to coordinate with suppliers. Berenice. His relief was palpable. Thank God, we've been holding things together with duct tape and prayer. Is your father... He's recovering, I said, settling into the chair at the head of the table. But he won't be back soon. I'm here to help stabilize things. What's our immediate status? Frank's report was grim. Hartley's embezzlement had drained cash reserves. Outstanding invoices totaled over $1 million. Credit lines were frozen. 3 major contracts were in jeopardy. We have maybe 2 weeks of operating capital, he concluded. After that, 60 people lose their jobs and my mother's legacy disappears. I finished. Not acceptable. Here's what we're going to do. I spent the next 6 hours implementing triage. Using my marketing expertise, I crafted communications to clients explaining the transition in leadership. I negotiated payment plans with suppliers leveraging long-standing relationships. Most importantly, I discovered something that even the FBI had missed. Jonathan kept a second set of books. Frank told me quietly. Hidden digital files. He was skimming, yes, but he was also hiding legitimate income from the IRS. There's nearly $300,000 in an offshore account that technically belongs to the company. How do you know this? Frank looked uncomfortable. He tried to recruit me once, showed me how easy it was. I refused, but I remembered the account details. Never thought I'd need them until now. It was illegal money hidden from taxes tainted by Hartley's crimes, but it was also the lifeline that could save 60 jobs and keep the company alive long enough to recover legally. We're going to repatriate that money, I decided. Full disclosure to the IRS, pay whatever penalties necessary. Better to save the company legally than let it die pure. That afternoon, I met with Grandma Ruth to discuss another piece of the family crisis. She received me in her living room, the FBI surveillance equipment finally removed. I've been expecting you, she said, pouring tea with steady hands. You want me to drop the charges against your father. I want to understand what you need to heal from this, I corrected. Dad betrayed you. That's unforgivable. But sending him to prison won't undo that betrayal. It might prevent future ones. He's a broken man, Grandma. Between the heart attack and losing everything he built, prison might actually kill him. Is that justice or revenge? She studied me over her teacup. You've grown harder, Berenice. More pragmatic. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. It's necessary. Our family is in crisis. Melody's recovering from a gunshot wound. Dad's facing federal charges. Mom's in denial. Someone has to make the hard choices. And you've appointed yourself. Who else is there? Grandma Ruth smiled sadly. You're right, of course. You've always been the responsible one. Very well. Here are my terms. I'll drop the criminal charges if your father agrees to transfer his ownership stake in this house to you and Melody immediately. I want it protected from his creditors and poor decisions. That's fair. I also want a formal apology, not a lawyer-crafted statement, but real acknowledgement of what he did. And I want him to get therapy for whatever drove him to betray his own mother. I'll make it happen. Was one more thing, she added. Your mother needs help too. This blind favoritism, the denial, it's a sickness of its own. Family counseling all of you together. I agreed to everything. Grandma Ruth was offering more mercy than my father deserved, but it came with conditions that might actually heal our fractured family. That evening, I returned to the hospital to find Melody awake and talking with Mom. The tension between them seemed different, less about favorites and more about shared trauma. Berenice? Melody tried to sit up, wincing at the movement. The nurses said the FBI caught 2 more associates. Is it really ending? It's ending, I confirmed. Your testimony put away an entire criminal network. You should be proud. Proud? She laughed bitterly. I'm a gambling addict who became a prostitute and money launderer. Not exactly achievement goals. You're a survivor who made terrible choices under impossible pressure, I corrected. And when it counted, you chose to fight back. That took real courage. Mom surprised me by speaking up. She's right, Melody. We failed you by making you think you had to be perfect to be loved. You made mistakes trying to live up to impossible standards we created. We all made mistakes, I added, but we're going to fix them, together. I explained my actions of the day, stabilizing the company, negotiating with Grandma Ruth, setting up family therapy. For the first time in our lives, neither Mom nor Melody questioned my decisions or resented my capability. They simply looked relieved that someone was taking charge. Later that night, I stood on my apartment balcony looking out at Seattle's lights. In 1 week, I'd gone from ignored daughter to family matriarch, from marketing director to emergency CEO. The weight was enormous, but I found I could carry it. My phone buzzed with a text from Melody. Thank you for saving my life. Not just tonight, but everything. I love you, sis. I smiled, texting back, we saved each other. Rest now. Tomorrow we start rebuilding. The Bentley was gone along with all it represented. The false success, the criminal connections, the toxic favoritism that had poisoned our family. In its place was something harder but more honest, a family acknowledging its failures and working toward redemption. I thought about the power of attorney Grandma Ruth had secretly given me months ago, trusting me even when my own parents didn't. She'd seen this moment coming, known that someone would need to step up when the lies finally collapsed. Now, I held that power along with the responsibility for my family's future. Dad's company would survive restructured and legitimate. Melody would recover and rebuild her life free from criminal influence. Mom would learn to see both daughters clearly. Grandma Ruth would get her apology and her peace. As for me, I'd found my role at last. Not the perfect daughter who needed nothing, but the strong one who could hold everyone together when everything fell apart. It wasn't the recognition I'd wanted as a child, but it was the purpose I'd needed as an adult. The Caldwell family would survive this crisis, not because we were perfect, but because we finally admitted we weren't. And in that admission, we found the strength to become something better, honest, united, and ready to face whatever came next. The family therapy session was scheduled for Thursday afternoon at a discreet office in Wallingford. Dr. Patricia Huang came highly recommended for dealing with family trauma and criminal justice issues. As I helped Melody navigate the building in her wheelchair, her shoulder still healing, I wondered if we were ready for this level of honesty. Dad had been released from the hospital that morning, looking frail but determined. Mom drove him, maintaining the supportive wife facade even as cracks showed in her perfect makeup. We gathered in Dr. Huang's office, a circle of damaged people trying to pretend we were still a family. Thank you for coming. Dr. Huang began, her voice calm and professional. I understand there have been recent traumatic events, but I'd like to start by exploring the family dynamics that existed before the current crisis. Would someone like to share their perspective on how this family typically functioned? Silence stretched uncomfortably until I spoke. We operated on unequal terms. Melody was the focus of attention and resources. I was expected to be self-sufficient. Our parents never acknowledged this disparity. That's not true, Mom protested immediately. We love both our daughters equally. Love and attention aren't the same thing, Melody said quietly. Berenice is right. I got everything and she got nothing. I just never understood why until recently. Dr. Huang turned to my parents. Can you help us understand how these patterns developed? Dad shifted uncomfortably. Berenice was always so capable. From the time she was small, she did everything perfectly. Melody needed more help. But why? I pressed. Why did you assume I didn't need support just because I was capable? Mom's hands twisted in her lap. She looked at Dad, then at Dr. Huang, then finally at me. There's something we never told you, either of you. The room seemed to hold its breath. Richard isn't your biological father, Berenice. The words hit like a physical blow. I stared at my mother, unable to process what I'd heard. Beside me, Melody gasped. What? My voice came out strangled. Mom was crying now, years of suppressed truth finally spilling out. I was young, barely 20. There was someone else before your father. When I got pregnant, he disappeared. Richard knew when we met, and he promised to raise you as his own. We got married when you were 6 months old. But the birth certificate? We had it amended after the wedding. It was easier back then. We thought if you never knew, it wouldn't matter. You were so young. I looked at the man I'd called Dad my entire life. His face was etched with pain. I loved you from the moment I met you, he said hoarsely. You were this perfect baby, so alert and intelligent. I swore I'd be the father you deserved. But you weren't, I said, the pieces falling into place with horrible clarity. You tried, but you couldn't forget I wasn't really yours. And when Melody came along, Our miracle baby, Mom whispered. The child that made us a real family in Richard's parents' eyes. They'd been so angry about him marrying a woman with a baby. Melody legitimized us. So you poured everything into her, I continued, anger and understanding warring in my chest. Every resource, every moment of attention, because she was the real daughter, while I was the reminder of Mom's mistake. It wasn't conscious, Dad protested weakly. We didn't mean to. But you did. Melody's voice was fierce. You made Berenice feel like an outsider in her own family, and you made me feel like I had to be perfect to justify all that attention. You damaged both of us. Dr. Huang intervened gently. Let's take a moment to process this revelation. Berenice, how are you feeling right now? How was I feeling? Betrayed, relieved, furious, vindicated. 28 years of confusion suddenly made sense. Every moment of favoritism, every dismissal of my achievements, every assumption that I didn't need support. It all stemmed from this original lie. I feel like my entire life has been based on a deception, I said finally. Every family dinner where I felt like an outsider, I actually was one. Every time you chose Melody over me, you were choosing your real daughter. You are real, Dad said desperately. You're my daughter in every way that matters. I signed your birth certificate. I paid for your... He stopped realizing what he was about to say. You paid for my what? I asked dangerously. Were you about to remind me that you paid for things as if that equals love? I went to your school plays, he continued weakly. Your graduations. You left my college graduation early for Melody's breakup, I reminded him. You missed my promotion celebration for her failed business launch. Every milestone in my life came second to her dramas. Because I felt guilty, Mom exploded. Every time I looked at you succeeding, I saw proof that you didn't need us. You were so much like him, brilliant, independent, driven, and every success felt like judgment for my failure as a young woman. Who was he? I asked. My biological father? Mom shook her head. It doesn't matter. He's gone. It matters to me. His name was David Chen. He was a graduate student in economics when I was in undergrad. Brilliant, ambitious, completely unreliable. When I told him I was pregnant, he said it would derail his career. He transferred to a university in Hong Kong and never contacted us again. I sat back, processing this information. My biological father was Asian. That explained the subtle differences in my features, that no one ever mentioned the questions about whether I was adopted that occasionally came from strangers. Does he know I exist? I asked. I don't know, Mom admitted. I tried to find him once when you were 5, thinking you deserved to know, but he'd vanished into the international finance world. For all I know, he could be dead. You should have told me, I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. Both of you. I had a right to know. We were trying to protect you, Dad said. No, Melody interjected. You were trying to protect yourselves from judgment, from questions, from having to admit that your perfect family was built on lies. The session continued for another hour, revelations and recriminations flying. But something had shifted. The fundamental dishonesty that had poisoned our family for decades was finally in the open. It was ugly and painful, but it was real. As we prepared to leave, Dr. Huang gave us homework. I want each of you to write a letter to the family expressing what you need to heal from these revelations. We'll share them in our next session. Outside, we stood awkwardly by our cars. The family that had arrived was not the one leaving. Everything had changed. I need time, I told them, to process this, to decide what it means for us going forward. Dad reached out as if to hug me, then stopped. I love you, Berenice. That's never been a lie. Maybe not, I conceded. But you loved me differently than you loved Melody, and now I know why. I drove home alone, my mind reeling. In trying to save my family from financial ruin and criminal connections, I'd uncovered a deeper truth that explained everything. The favoritism wasn't random or inexplicable. It was the result of a foundational lie my parents told themselves and me. That night, I began searching for David Chen. Not because I needed another father, but because I needed to understand half of my genetic heritage. The search led me through academic databases and financial publications, tracing the path of a man who'd chosen ambition over fatherhood. I found him by midnight. David Chen, now 51, was the CEO of a major investment firm in Singapore. Married 3 children, a life built on the foundation of abandoning his first child. His corporate photo showed features I recognized in my own mirror: the shape of my eyes, the angle of my cheekbones. Did I want to contact him? Did it matter after all these years? I wasn't sure. But at least now I knew the truth, the complete, complicated, painful truth about why I'd always felt like an outsider in my own family. Because in a way, I always had been. 2 weeks after the family therapy revelation, I found myself in a federal courthouse in downtown Seattle. The massive building loomed gray against the October sky, a fitting backdrop for the legal reckonings about to unfold. I'd coordinated everyone's appearances, scheduled meetings with prosecutors, and somehow held our fractured family together through the process. Melody's hearing was first. She walked beside me, her arms still in a sling, but her head held high. She'd traded the designer clothes for a conservative suit, looking younger and more vulnerable than I'd seen her in years. The United States versus Melody Caldwell, the bailiff announced. We took our seats as her lawyer, James Patterson, prepared to address the court. The federal prosecutor, a stern woman named Amanda Chen, the shared surname with my biological father, wasn't lost on me, outlined the charges and the plea agreement. Your Honor, Patterson began, Ms. Caldwell has provided exceptional cooperation in the case against the Volkov criminal organization. Her testimony and evidence have led to 43 arrests and the seizure of over $12 million in criminal assets. She was shot in the line of duty while assisting federal agents. We request the court accept the plea agreement for 3 years probation and 500 hours of community service. Judge Martinez, a silver-haired woman with piercing eyes, reviewed the documents. Ms. Caldwell, please stand. Melody rose, trembling slightly. You've admitted to serious crimes, the judge said. Money laundering and facilitating criminal enterprises are not victimless offenses. However, your cooperation and the circumstances of your involvement warrant leniency. I accept the plea agreement with one modification. You'll also attend mandatory gambling addiction counseling for the duration of your probation. Yes, Your Honor, Melody whispered. Furthermore, you're to have no contact with any form of gambling, legal or illegal. No casinos, no online poker, not even scratch-off lottery tickets. Understood? Yes, Your Honor. As we left the courtroom, Melody collapsed against me. It's over. It's really over. This part is, I corrected gently. Recovery is just beginning. Dad's hearing was that afternoon. He looked older than his 58 years, the stress having carved deep lines into his face. Criminal charges for the mortgage fraud had been dropped in exchange for Grandma Ruth's agreement and his cooperation with federal authorities, but he still faced civil penalties. Mr. Caldwell, Judge Roberts, addressed him. You've admitted to attempting fraud against your own mother. While criminal charges have been withdrawn, this court finds you liable for damages and legal fees totaling $97,000. Additionally, you're barred from serving as a financial fiduciary for any family member for 10 years. Dad accepted the judgment without protest. He'd already transferred his ownership stake in Grandma Ruth's house to Melody and me, as agreed. The man who'd built a business on pride and control was systematically giving up both. After court, we convened at the lawyer's office to handle the business matters. I'd spent 2 weeks analyzing Caldwell Construction Supply's finances, negotiating with creditors, and developing a survival plan. The IRS has agreed to a payment plan for the repatriated offshore funds. I explained to the assembled group, Dad Frank Martinez and 2 other senior employees. With penalties and back taxes, we owe $480,000 over 5 years. It's manageable if we restructure operations. What kind of restructuring? Frank asked. I pulled up my presentation. We're selling the overflow warehouse and 2 delivery trucks. That generates immediate capital. We're also pivoting from general construction supply to specialize in sustainable building materials. It's a growing market with better margins. Dad watched silently as I outlined the plan to save his company. When I finished, he asked quietly, "Why are you doing this? After everything—" "Because 60 people depend on this business for their livelihoods," I replied. "They didn't create this mess. They shouldn't suffer for it." I meant, "Why are you helping me?" I considered the question. Because despite everything, you're still the man who taught me to ride a bike and checked my homework. You weren't a perfect father, but you were my father. That has to count for something. That evening, I met with Agent Kim for a final debriefing. The FBI had successfully prosecuted most of the Volkov organization, though Victor himself remained at large somewhere in Eastern Europe. "Your sister's testimony was crucial," Kim told me. "She'll need to be available if we ever capture Volkov, but for now, she's fulfilled all obligations." "What about protection?" "We'll maintain surveillance for another month, but honestly, the threat is minimal. Organizations like this are pragmatic. With their Seattle operations destroyed, revenge is bad business." As I prepared to leave, Kim added, "You know you could have a future in crisis management. The way you handled this situation, coordinating legal strategies, managing family dynamics, restructuring a failing business, it's impressive." "I have a job," I reminded her. "Just saying, if you ever want a change, the FBI could use consultants with your skills." I drove home considering her words. The past month had revealed capabilities I didn't know I possessed. Under pressure, I'd become the person my family needed. Strong, strategic, uncompromising when necessary, but merciful when possible. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown international number. My heart stopped fearing another threat, but the message was different. "Ms. Caldwell, I recently learned of your existence through a mutual acquaintance in the legal community. I understand you're my biological daughter. I'm traveling to Seattle next month for business. Would you be willing to meet David Chen?" I stared at the screen, processing this new complication. My biological father, the ghost who'd shaped my life through absence, suddenly wanted to meet. The timing felt surreal. Just as I'd resolved one family crisis, another potential drama appeared. I texted back, "I'll consider it. Send me your travel dates." That night, I had dinner with Melody at her apartment. A modest one-bedroom she'd found in Ballard, far from the luxury high-rise she'd lost. We ate takeout Thai food and talked about everything except the past month. "I start community service next week," she said eventually, "at a women's shelter, counseling trafficking victims." "That's appropriate given what you witnessed." "I think about that girl sometimes, the one in the house. I hope she got out." Agent Kim said they rescued 14 victims during the raids. She was probably one of them. Melody nodded, then changed subjects. "Are you going to meet him? David Chen." "How did you—" "Mom told me he contacted you. She's terrified you'll choose him over them." "I'm not choosing anyone," I said firmly. "I'm gathering information. Understanding where I come from doesn't mean abandoning where I am." "For what it's worth," Melody said, "I'm glad you're my sister. Blood or half-blood or whatever. You saved all of us." "We saved each other," I corrected. "That's what family does." As I drove home, I thought about the legal resolutions we'd achieved. Melody avoiding prison, Dad escaping criminal charges, the business surviving, the criminal organization dismantled. On paper, it looked like victory. But the real work was just beginning. Legal judgments couldn't heal emotional wounds or rebuild trust overnight. We had therapy sessions ahead, difficult conversations pending, and relationships to reconstruct from the ground up. The Bentley that had started this journey was long gone, but its lessons remained. Lies, no matter how beautiful, always crash eventually. The truth, however painful, was the only foundation strong enough to build on. And for the first time in our family's history, we were building on truth. 6 months later, spring had arrived in Seattle with its usual mixture of rain and stunning beauty. The cherry blossoms were blooming along the waterfront as I made my way to our weekly family therapy session. What had started as crisis intervention had evolved into something deeper, a genuine attempt to reconstruct our family on healthier foundations. The waiting room at Dr. Huang's office had become familiar territory. I arrived to find Melody already there, looking healthier than she had in years. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost, and her eyes were clear, no longer shadowed by secrets and fear. "Guess what?" she said, barely containing her excitement. "I got accepted to the Addiction Counselor Certification Program. I'd been helping her with the application essays for weeks. Yes, classes start in the fall. 2 years from now, I'll be qualified to help other gambling addicts." "That's amazing, Mel." I hugged her, genuinely proud. "You're going to be great at it." "I couldn't have done it without you reviewing my essays 100 times and helping me figure out financial aid. And—" "That's what sisters do," I interrupted. "We help each other." Our parents arrived together, a unified front that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. Dad's health had improved with regular cardiac rehab and reduced stress. He'd handed over day-to-day operations of the company to Frank Martinez, taking an advisory role that let him work part-time. Mom had started volunteering at a local literacy center, finding purpose beyond being a wife and mother. "Before we start," Mom said, pulling out an envelope, "Berenice, this came to the house for you." The return address was from Singapore. David Chen had written several times since our initial meeting 3 months ago. That encounter had been awkward. Two strangers trying to bridge 28 years of absence over coffee. He'd apologized, explained his reasons, offered financial support I didn't need or want. We'd parted cordially, but without promises. "Are you going to read it?" Melody asked. "Later, this is family time." Dr. Huang emerged, welcoming us into her office. We took our usual seats, the configuration that had become our new normal. No longer parents versus daughters, but 4 individuals working toward common understanding. "I'd like to start with gratitudes today," Dr. Huang suggested. "Each of you name something you're grateful for from this week." "I'll go first," Dad volunteered. "I'm grateful Berenice trusted me to review the new sustainable product line proposals. It felt good to contribute without controlling." "I'm grateful Melody asked me to go shopping with her," Mom added. "Just the 2 of us. No agenda, no performing. We actually talked." "I'm grateful my parents came to my community service presentation," Melody said. "Having them see me help other addicts, it meant everything." "I'm grateful we're all here," I said simply. 6 months ago, I wasn't sure we'd have a family left to save. The session progressed through updates and challenges. Dad talked about the difficulty of stepping back from his company. Mom discussed her struggle to see her daughters as individuals rather than extensions of herself. Melody shared her ongoing battle with gambling urges. I admitted my tendency to take on everyone's problems as my own. "You've all made remarkable progress," Dr. Huang observed, "but I'm curious about something. Berenice, you've been the family stabilizer through this crisis. How do you feel about that role now that the immediate danger has passed?" I considered the question. Lighter. For the first time, I don't feel like I have to hold everything together alone. Everyone's doing their part. "And how does it feel to know the truth about your biological parentage?" "Complicated," I admitted, "but also freeing. I spent 28 years wondering why I didn't quite fit. Now I know it wasn't my imagination. The family dynamics make sense, even if they were harmful." "Do you forgive us?" Mom asked, suddenly breaking protocol, "for lying to you all those years?" "I'm working on it," I said honestly. "Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a process. But I understand why you made the choices you did. Fear, shame, trying to protect everyone. The intentions weren't malicious, even if the results were damaging." After therapy, we went to lunch at a waterfront restaurant. It was becoming our tradition. Therapy followed by a meal where we practiced being a normal family. The conversations were still sometimes stilted, the old patterns threatening to resurface, but we were trying. I have an announcement, Melody said over dessert. I'm moving in with someone. We all froze. Melody's romantic history was littered with disastrous men who'd enabled her worst impulses or tried to save her from herself. His name is Marcus, she continued. He's in my recovery group. I know. They say don't date in recovery. But he's been sober for 3 years and we've been taking it slow. He makes me want to be better. When do we meet him? Dad asked, his protective instincts kicking in. Next week, maybe dinner at Berenice's place if that's okay. Of course, I agreed, though I shared Dad's concerns. Melody's judgment in men had been historically terrible. That evening, I finally opened David Chen's letter in the privacy of my apartment. Dear Berenice, I've thought carefully about our meeting and subsequent correspondence. You were gracious to see me after my decades of absence more than I deserved. I want you to know that I've established a trust fund in your name, accessible whenever you choose. It's not an attempt to buy forgiveness, merely a recognition of my failure to provide support when you needed it. I also wanted to share that I've told my family about you. My wife was shocked but understanding. My children, your half-siblings, are curious about you. If you're ever interested in expanding your family connections, they would welcome contact. I understand if you prefer to maintain distance. I forfeited any right to expectations long ago. But please know that learning of your accomplishments has been both humbling and inspiring. You became extraordinary, not because of me, but in spite of my absence. With respect and regret, David, I set the letter aside, unsure how to feel. The trust fund felt like guilt money, but the acknowledgement of half-siblings intrigued me. Did I want more family complications, or was I curious about people who shared my DNA without the baggage of my upbringing? My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Grandma Ruth, who'd become a steady source of wisdom through our family reconstruction. I'm making my famous pot roast tomorrow, she said without preamble. You'll come for dinner. Bring that nice FBI agent you've been seeing. I smiled at her directness. We've only been on 3 dates, Grandma. At our age, 3 dates is practically engaged. Besides, any woman who can take down a criminal organization deserves my pot roast. It's Agent Kim who did that, not me. Nonsense! You held this family together while everything burned down around us. That takes more strength than any FBI raid. Now dinner's at 6. Don't be late. After we hung up, I reflected on how much had changed. The family that had nearly destroyed itself through lies and favoritism was slowly learning honesty and balance. Melody was building a future in recovery. Our parents were discovering who they were beyond their roles, and I was learning to be part of the family without being responsible for it. The Bentley had been replaced by Melody's modest Honda, bought with her earnings from a part-time job at a recovery center. Dad's construction company had survived, smaller but ethical. Mom had stopped living through her daughters and found her own purposes, and I discovered that being the strong one didn't mean being alone. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Kim. Still on for dinner Thursday, I promise no surveillance vans this time. I smiled, texting back confirmation. Sarah Kim had started as my FBI contact and evolved into something more. Someone who'd seen my family at its worst and still wanted to know us at our best. As rain began pattering against my windows, I thought about the letter from David Chen and the trust fund I'd probably never touch. Money wasn't what I'd needed from him. It was acknowledgement, truth, and the option to know him if I chose. The Caldwell family would never be perfect. We carried too many scars, too much history. But we were real now in a way we'd never been before. The lies were gone, replaced by sometimes uncomfortable truths. The favoritism had ended, replaced by genuine attempts at equality. The criminal connections were severed, replaced by legal struggles and honest work. It wasn't the family I dreamed of as a child, but it was the family I'd helped save as an adult, and that I was learning was enough. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Melody's boyfriend, to evaluate David Chen's offer to consider the ongoing work of rebuilding trust. But tonight, I was content to sit in my apartment watching the rain fall over Seattle, knowing my family was safe, honest, and finally healing. The Bentley was gone, but we'd all survived the crash. 1 year later, Grandma Ruth's 84th birthday party filled her house with a warmth that had nothing to do with the June sunshine streaming through the windows. The same living room that had once been rigged with FBI surveillance equipment now hosted a genuine family celebration, complete with homemade cake and sincere laughter. I stood in the kitchen arranging appetizers, marveling at how natural this felt. A year ago, family gatherings were performances of dysfunction. Now they were imperfect, but real moments of connection. Need help? Sarah Kim appeared beside me, having arrived early as she always did. Our relationship had evolved from professional contact to something I was still learning to trust. She understood my family's complications without judgment, having seen us at our worst and chosen to stick around for the better. Just trying to make Grandma's famous pinwheel sandwiches look as good as hers, I replied. Impossible standard. Melody chimed in, entering with her boyfriend Marcus. He was steady and kind, a former gambling addict who understood her struggles. They'd been living together for 6 months, supporting each other's recovery with a maturity that surprised everyone, including Melody herself. Berenice, dear, stop fussing with the food and come here. Grandma Ruth called from the living room. I have an announcement. We gathered around her chair where she sat like a benevolent queen surveying her realm. Mom and Dad flanked her, looking healthier than they had in years. The cardiac diet and therapy had done wonders for him, while she'd found confidence in her literacy volunteer work that had nothing to do with her daughter's achievements. I've decided to update my will, Grandma Ruth announced. Again. A flutter of old anxiety passed through the room. The last will update had triggered our family's near destruction. Relax, she continued, eyes twinkling. This time I'm doing it properly. The house will still go to Berenice and Melody equally when I'm gone. But I'm adding something new. I'm creating an education fund for my great-grandchildren whenever they might arrive. Grandma, Melody protested, blushing. That's a bit premature. At 84, everything I do is optimistic, Grandma Ruth replied. But this family has learned the hard way that transparency prevents disaster. So I'm telling you all now, openly with witnesses. And speaking of transparency, Dad cleared his throat. Frank and I have been discussing succession planning for the company. Berenice, we'd like to offer you a position on the board of directors. I nearly dropped the plate I was holding. Dad, I have a career. I don't know construction. You know business. You saved the company when I nearly destroyed it. Frank would remain CEO, but we need your strategic thinking for long-term planning. Can I think about it? Of course, no pressure. I've learned that particular lesson. As the party continued, I found myself observing my family with anthropologist eyes. Mom was showing Sarah photos from Melody's recent Community Service Award ceremony, proud without being overbearing. Dad was explaining sustainable building materials to Marcus, who listened with genuine interest. Melody was helping Grandma Ruth open presents their easy affection, a testament to forgiveness and growth. You did this, Sarah said quietly beside me. This healing. It started with you refusing to accept the dysfunction. We all did it, I corrected. I just lit the match. Everyone else chose whether to burn down or rise up. The doorbell rang and I went to answer it, finding a delivery person with an enormous flower arrangement. The card read, Happy birthday to Mrs. Ruth Caldwell, with respect from the Chen family Singapore. I'd eventually told David Chen about Grandma Ruth's role in our family drama. He'd been appalled that his absence had contributed to such pain even indirectly. The flowers were his way of acknowledging the woman who'd held our family's truth when everyone else was lying. Beautiful arrangement, Grandma Ruth said when I brought them in. From your other family? You're my family, I said firmly. They're biological relatives I'm getting to know. I'd video called my half-siblings twice. They were curious and kind, but we were strangers, united only by DNA. Maybe someday we'd be more, but for now I was focused on the family I'd fought to save. As afternoon turned to evening, Melody clinked her glass to get everyone's attention. I wanted to share something. I got my 6-month chip from Gamblers Anonymous yesterday. We applauded, understanding the magnitude of that achievement. 6 months without placing a bet, without seeking the high that had nearly destroyed her. But that's not all, she continued. I've been accepted to speak at the national conference next month. They want me to share my story, how gambling addiction led to criminal involvement, and how family support helped me recover. That's incredible, sweetheart, Mom said, tears in her eyes. Berenice helped me write the proposal, Melody added. She's the one who convinced me my story could help others. We helped each other, I said, echoing what had become our family motto. As the sun began to set, casting golden light through the windows, Grandma Ruth raised her coffee cup in a toast. To truth, she said simply, to the painful healing necessary truth that saved this family. We raised our glasses, each remembering the lies that had nearly destroyed us. The forged signatures, the fake success, the hidden parentage, the criminal connections. All of it exposed and processed, leaving scars but no longer festering wounds. I have something to add, I said, suddenly certain. Dad, I'll join the board, not full-time, but as an advisor. This family's learned that isolation breeds problems. Being involved prevents them. Dad's smile was answer enough. Later, as guests began leaving, I found myself on the back porch with Melody watching the sun set over Puget Sound. We sat in comfortable, silent sisters who'd found their way to each other through chaos. Do you ever think about the Bentley? She asked suddenly. Sometimes. It's hard to believe a car started all this. It didn't start it, Melody corrected. It revealed it. All the dysfunction to the lies, the criminal connections, they were already there. The Bentley just made them impossible to ignore. Do you miss it? The lifestyle? She considered carefully. I miss feeling special, but I was special for all the wrong reasons. Now, when Mom calls to check on me, it's because she cares not, because she's living through me. When Dad asks about my recovery, he's interested in my growth, not my performance. It's harder, but more real. And Marcus, he sees me, she said simply. Not the designer clothes or the fake success, just me. That's worth more than any Bentley. As we headed back inside, I realized how far we'd come. The family that had gathered for forced dinners and false celebrations now chose to be together. The daughters who'd been pitted against each other were genuine friends. The parents who'd built their marriage on lies had found honesty in therapy and hard work. One more thing, Grandma Ruth announced as we prepared to leave. I've decided to live to 100, so you'd better keep having these parties. Deal, we said in unison. As Sarah and I drove home together, she took my hand. Your family's pretty amazing. They're pretty crazy, I corrected. That too, but they're honest about it now. That was the key I realized. Not perfection, but honesty. Not absence of problems, but willingness to address them. The Bentley had represented everything fake in our family. Surface beauty hiding deep dysfunction. Now we drove practical cars and lived authentic lives. Oh, so, Sarah said as we pulled into my apartment complex, ready to introduce me to the Chen side. David invited us to visit Singapore. Maybe next year, I said. I'm still figuring out this family. Adding another seems ambitious. Fair enough. But Berenice, what you've built here, this honest, imperfect, loving family, that's the real success. Not the degrees or the job or the crisis management. This. She was right. In trying to save my family from criminal disaster, I'd helped them save themselves from something worse. A lifetime of lies and missed connections. The Bentley was gone, but in its place was something far more valuable, a family that knew each other's truths and chose to love anyway. As we headed inside, my phone buzzed with texts from the family group chat. something that hadn't existed a year ago. Photos from the party, thanks for organizing plans for next month's gathering. Normal family stuff that felt miraculous after everything we'd survived. The girl who'd stood in her parents' driveway watching her sister get a Bentley while she got nothing had transformed into a woman who understood she'd always had everything that mattered: strength, integrity, and the ability to see truth when others chose blindness. Now she had even more: a family capable of matching her honesty, a sister who was a friend, parents who saw her clearly, and a future built on solid ground. The Bentley had crashed, but we'd all survived. More than survived. We'd thrived, and that was the greatest gift of all. Looking back, I wouldn't change anything. Every painful revelation, every difficult confrontation, every moment of terror had led us here. To a real family capable of real love. The journey had been brutal, but the destination was worth it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Recovery was a daily choice. Honesty required constant vigilance. Family took work. But tonight I was grateful for the crash that had forced us to rebuild properly. The Bentley was gone forever. In its place was something priceless: truth, healing, and the unshakable knowledge that we'd faced our worst and chosen our best. Together. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey. Have you ever experienced favoritism in your family? How did you overcome it? And what brought healing to your relationships? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and consider subscribing for more stories about family redemption and the power of truth. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this message, please share it with them. Remember, it's never too late to rebuild broken relationships when everyone is willing to face the truth with courage and love. Wishing you and your families strength, honesty, and healing.